Linda, we're going to want to share screen with Claudia so she can,
I have the share screen enabled.
okay. Linda, can you let John promote it to panelist? Thank you. Please let Tony Boone in as well as a panelist. And then Christiana Hudson.
Is she under Christiana? She,
Yeah.
her?
Yes, Christiana Hudson.
Okay.
So have you got the attendee side open, Linda?
Yes, the attendees are all, they're not set to talk at this point, but I can if
No, we just want to make sure that
they're all in there.
they're all getting there okay.
Yep. We have 57 individuals at this point,
Okay.
and I'm trying to promote those. For some reason, Christiana's isn't wanting to promote. We'll keep working at it.
Okay.
She's not the right one.
Okay. All right, good evening. I want to thank everyone for coming out to the second night of the Pueblo Canyon Trails Conceptual Plans presentation. Due to some technical difficulties, this is a webinar meeting tonight. So it'll be a little bit different as we go through this evening. We'll kind of go through those steps in just a minute. Here's a brief overview. We'll start off with introductions. We'll do a presentation. Then we'll have a Q&A. You'll get a couple of minutes to either ask your question or provide your input and feedback. At the end, there will be a poll for this of support, non-support. And then if you do support it, we just ask you to rank it. Can you hit the next slide, Claudia?
Can you see that, Corey?
That's still the original slide. I was looking for the next page.
Oh. Let me try this.
Okay. So again, we're gonna do a little bit. Go back one. No.
Okay.
This was going to be a little different. Again, all your thoughts and inputs are valuable. Please listen to the presentation presentation, when we do open it up to Q&A, please direct your comments to the speaker or staff. All of our citizens have their opinions on this, so we don't want to try to step on anyone. We'll give you about 2 minutes for comments. And then again, at the end of the meeting, we'll give it for support or non-support. Next slide. So I'm going to let Claudia introduce the project and introduce our team, and we'll go from there.
Great. Thank you, Corey. Thanks everyone for attending the meeting tonight. Sorry we can't be in person. So we've been working on this project since November. We just did a public meeting beginning of May, and the scope of this project, just to recap for everyone, is to provide a beginner and intermediate mountain bike trails for the Los Alamos community, with the focus on amenities for youth that will contribute to their mountain biking skills, and to provide connectivity between different areas of the Los Alamos community. So with that, we've got the 7-mile trail, which is an IMBA green-blue trail that connects the Aquatic Center to the Y, a connector trail from the roundabout to the Aquatic Center, a beginner level bike skills park, NICA route, which is National Interscholastic Cycling Association route, and an equestrian trail that connects from the North Mesa horse stables down into Bio Canyon. So our team was selected to look at these conceptual trail plans, and we're largely, I would say, our team is comprised of planners who not only are going out there and biking and using these trails, but our team has experience, a vast level of experience in planning and construction as well. So I'm Claudia Horn, the principal of Design Office. We're a landscape architecture and planning firm in Santa Fe, and we've done many trail projects within northern New Mexico, including La Tierra Trails. On our team, we've got Tony Boone from Tony Boone Trails. He has an extensive experience both as a designer, as a public administrator, a builder, a user. He's worked on over 600 miles of shared use trails throughout the world. He's contributed to IMBA, the books, and has also served as a trainer of the IMBA trail care crew, and is focusing on sustainable trail design. Chinook, John Altschuld, is on the call as well. He's works closely with Tony Boone as a trail planner. He's part of the executive committee of the Professional Trail Builders Association. And his focus is, he does drone imagery. So you probably, or you may have seen, we did some extensive existing conditions photography, drone imagery of the canyon in order to more quickly assess existing conditions and look at alternatives for these conceptual trail layouts. And then we've got Mcgill Trails, who they're based out of Colorado, a bike skills park planner, installer, and user. And they've done a number of skills parks in Colorado and also throughout the southeast of the US. So that's our team, and we're very excited to be working on this project and getting your feedback tonight.
So just a little additional information from the last time. This project started out in 2015. There were other places looked at. Los Alamos Canyon is not owned by the county. Perito Mountain is private ownership, and they've even expressed that Specifically, the Aquatic Trail and the Blue-Green Trail are not on their radar for the next couple of years, next decade. Bio Canyon was previously considered, but the community decided it was not a good place. And then some recent comments about White Rock. There's some space concerns, and it's kind of detached from the mountain bike trails that lead up to Perito Mountain. So it's kind of a disconnect. Go ahead, next slide. We also wanted to share, these are a couple of items from the strategic leadership plan, both of why we think this project is viable. We're trying to find that balance between protecting and improving. And then this is also investing in our infrastructure. Some additional documents. We looked at the comp plan, the tourism plan, and the open space plan as we were looking through this. And I'm not going to read all of these, but on the comp plan, there was a very large conversation about the use of trails, use of county-owned land, looking at tourism, making sure that we preserve this historic. But these were all identified in the key themes. And the parentheticals on the outside are the core themes where each one of these items were discussed. And as you can see, many of these were discussed in more than one of the core theme areas. And then finally, this comes directly out of the comp plan for land use. It says open space passive corresponds to the W1 zoning designation, includes lands that remain primarily in their natural state, but accommodate various kinds of low impact recreation such as hiking, biking, and equestrian trails. So we wanted to acknowledge that as well. Next slide. Go ahead, Claudia.
Thanks, Corey. So as part of this project, starting in January, we conducted a series of focus group meetings just to get input on the project and to hear your concerns. We did specific, so we met with just the public at large, Parks and Recreation boards, LANL representatives, NICA representatives, equestrians. And then we also did a couple of sessions with youth to get input on the Bike Skills Park and conducted a survey that was focused on kind of what the youth wanted to see in the Bike Skills Park. We, like I mentioned before, we had a first meeting beginning of May, and this is our second meeting here. This is a little bit different of a presentation than the May meeting, because we're actually trying to incorporate some of the feedback that we heard from the first meeting. And did you want to do this, Corey, or I can do this?
Okay.
So some of the feedback that we heard was a concern about the threatened or endangered species and the habitat. So you'll see in this presentation that we're proposing today, we've rerouted one of the trails, the 7 Mile Trail. The historic and cultural protection, there were concerns about areas around, like down in the canyon, that we were close or on resources. So we're looking at that. The county has also met with representatives of San Ildefonso Pueblo. So we'll go into that a little bit more in detail as we look at the NICA route. That's the one that's further down in the canyon. There were concerns about user conflict. So we're looking at rerouting the trail to minimize those conflicts. There were a number of comments about looking at alternate locations. I think Corey went through that briefly at the beginning of this presentation, just to indicate that other alternate locations were considered, and the ones that are presented here our recommendations for the best locations for these project components. A concern about the route standards. So we want to ensure that these proposals meet the criteria, and where they don't, we're indicating signage. And it was brought up to the soil profiles, the cryptobiotic soils, and a concern about disturbance of those soils, particularly down in the canyon near the Y, with improvements around there. So we're looking at limiting the disturbance and seeing how we can mitigate any or minimize the disturbance to those soils. So to the environmental and cultural aspect, that was sort of one theme that we heard not only from the focus groups, but also from the public meeting. And this slide was presented at the last meeting just to show the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service mapping of critical habitat for the threatened Mexican spotted owl and the endangered Jemez mountain salamander. So you can see the blue is a Mexican spotted owl, the orange is the salamander. And granted, this is critical habitat as mapped by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as it applies to improvements within these zones that receive federal funding. The range is far beyond these areas. So I think we all need to be aware that just anything that's in the canyon that seems like it would be habitat for these species, we want to acknowledge that and be very respectful of what's proposed. So another mapping overlay, and this might be a little difficult to see, is a sensitive habitat. So that's a yellow layer that's on the bottom map that is part of Los Alamos County mapping. And those are just more refined mapped areas within the canyon that are moister habitats where some of these species have been seen. So cultural sites are other locations that we know are within these areas that we want to be respectful of, as well as hazardous sites. So some of the other feedback that we got, this is primarily from the focus group meetings, that there needs to be a really clear indication of the project scope, which Los Alamos has a lot of intermediate and dominantly expert trails. So making this project focus on really beginner and youth as improvements to, or to kind of diversify the offerings and allow kind of an entry-level experience for people who want to begin the sport of mountain biking and have the project be more community focused. The bike skills park, the concern was the location and limiting disturbance. So I think you'll see in our presentation that we're trying to accommodate that with both the location and with our recommendations for how it be designed and executed. And context is something that Los Alamos County staff brought up about just having connectivity with these improvements that we're proposing and the existing trails and downtown areas and the teen center, and what kind of impacts this might have on the aquatic center. So with that, I will start with, we've got 7 project components. So I'll start with, or no, we have 5, sorry. This is a 7-mile trail. We have 5 project components. So the 7-mile trail extends from the aquatic center to the Y. This is the approximate boundary here. So we heard feedback at the last public meeting. Our proposal there was to use the Pueblo Canyon Trail for the descent down into the canyon. There was a recommendation to actually reroute that. So the blue line here illustrates a revised routing So it adds about just a little bit less than a mile to the total distance, and requires one dismount location where there's a steep incline at the Walnut Canyon Utility Road. So that's as you descend down there into the canyon. We think that with this reroute, you have one kind of tricky spot, but it avoids a little bit more of the sensitive habitat and the historic trail that's the Pueblo Canyon Trail. Sorry, the Ranch School Road Trail. So this is one option. This is the recommended route. On the east side, you'll see that this trail dominantly follows the Pueblo Canyon Trail and Road. So it's more of a green route. An alternate route for this would be kind of halfway through, veering off from the Pueblo Canyon Trail, heading and utilizing the Tent Rocks Trail as an alternate route to the Y. This would provide a little bit more blue options and provide a little bit more interest for mountain bikers on the eastern half of the trail. And then a third alternate is utilizing the Pueblo Canyon Trail and Road for the kind of midsection and the proposed kind of NICA route to the trailhead, a new trailhead down in the canyon. So I'll go through that a little bit in the next, as we present the NICA route. So it just veers, the easternmost portion of this is different from the recommended route.
Claudia, you want to talk about the construction, that most of that particular trail is all on existing trail?
Yeah, so this trail only requires, I mean, this particular one requires a little bit of new trail on the east side. We have a very small reroute on the west side, but our team really felt like there's so much mileage that's really good, in good condition, meets the blue and green IMBA standards within the canyon, that most of this trail is all on existing trails. And our recommendation is to just conduct trail maintenance for these segments, provide signage indicating that this is a green-blue section for beginners and intermediates, and to provide signage also for locations where it does not meet those standards. So you can see that's where the dismount, that's a location where we would have signs indicating that you're heading into a steeper section and dismount if you're not comfortable. And I'll let me just go through this here real quick, because I think this illustrates this is a zoom in on the west section. So you can see here, this is sort of a small reroute that we're proposing just as you descend down into Acid Canyon. And instead of using the Ranch School Trail, you go through kind of the mid-level section of the canyon and descend down at the Walnut Canyon Utility Road. So this is the new proposed routing of the 7 Mile Trail. And it reduces, like I mentioned, it reduces the habitat overlay intersect by about 1,700 linear feet. And so this is the other alternative that we're proposing. And I'll at this point let Tony or John weigh in on this if they want to add anything to their kind of recommendations for this 7 Mile Trail.
Yeah, I'll add something in. Could you go back a couple slides, Claudia?
Yeah.
Go
This one?
to, yep, so I know someone asked about existing versus new trail. Recommended route, this one, except for that tiny little piece to accommodate the pump
Over
track.
here.
Yep, all of it's on existing trail. So as far as construction, the recommendations really are more maintenance constructions than what I would call new construction. If you go to the next slide, this one, same thing, except for that little orange section on the left, yep, by Acid Canyon, all of its existing trail. And then if you go to alternate route B, this one does include that section of new trail if the NICA route, the NICA course is built down there. So just want to kind of address that, but I think that's the only thing I wanted to maybe clarify a bit.
I'm good with that for now.
All right. So next we'll go to the connector trail, which connects from the roundabout to the aquatic center. So here again, this is with the exception of this little reroute down in Acid Canyon, we're looking at all existing trail. This route, this connection is about just 2 3/4 miles. There, because of steep sections, there's 2 locations here where we're recommending dismount signage for people who are looking for a green-blue beginner intermediate route. And this would use existing bridges. So bridges in Acid Canyon and Pueblo Canyon. And the recommendations here, just like the 7-mile trail, is really a focus on signage and trail maintenance. All right. So I'm going to go next to the Bike Skills Park. This is something that we looked at a couple of different locations for where the Bike Skills Park is most appropriate. So there are 2 areas that we had investigated. One is just north and lower down in Acid Canyon, just north of or northwest of Kinnick Park. It's an area that it's got good kind of flatter terrain. It's got good access, good visibility from above. It's close to existing youth and public services. It's got parking there at the Aquatic Center, and it's close to infrastructure. So that's water and amenities at the Aquatic Center. The other location that we looked at was off of Olive Street, so down north or at the end of Olive Street there near the Pueblo Canyon Bridge. It also has good terrain and a clear area. It's got road access. Doesn't have good parking, at least not now. Like that's something that would be needed most likely in the canyon. And it is a little more remote. So because of the kind of the synergy of and the access to infrastructure at the Aquatic Center, our recommendation was to look at the space there in Acid Canyon as the location for kind of the beginnings of a bike skills park. And just to define a little bit more of what that is. And as I'll get to that in a second. So we did gather input from the youth to find out, so if Los Alamos County does a bike skills park, what would the youth be interested in? And they'd be really interested in the new facility, and many of them would use it on almost a daily basis. They wanted to see progressive drop areas and a focus on beginner to intermediate level features, and wanted it to be dirt. So you can see overwhelmingly the survey response wanted a dirt surface. We did get with the survey, so we did conduct a survey, but we also did focus group meetings. So it was a combination of those that results in the kind of the takeaways from that you see on this slide. So for the survey, responders. We had about almost 60% were beginner, intermediate riders, and 86% were mountain bikers or cross-country trail riders. Their goals or concerns was really making sure that it was accessible to riders of all skills, skill levels and ages. And then it was properly maintained and provided this kind of progressive skills. Besides the dirt surface, which you can see here, the main features that people wanted were the jumps, the pump track, skills and flow lines. And the top amenities that were desired were near restrooms and water, access to parking and shade structures. So Mcgill Trails came up with this preliminary kind of or conceptual design for the Bike Skills Park. There's 3 areas here. There's the kids pump track, a strider zone, and a progressive lines. So this goes from green to blue to black, and it has a loop. So it is all internal. It is described on the perimeter by the 7-mile blue-green trail, and there will be clear signage and distinct access points into the Bike Skills Park, so it's clear when you're entering the park facility. And this site was selected because there's some clear areas, level areas for some of these features, and the design is proposed to really work with the terrain and the existing conditions and the materials that are within this portion of the canyon. So to give you a little bit better idea of what some of these features are, this is the strider zone. So there's about 5% of Los Alamos residents are 5 years and under. So there's a need for something that can accommodate toddlers. The strider zone is for the bikes that don't have pedals. And so these are just for toddler and younger kids level skills that features that builds their confidence and provides them an introduction to the sport. It's often like family focused, and there's a pretty small footprint and areas for the caregivers to sit and watch the kids engage in this or begin to learn the sport. The pump track uses the level area. You can see here kind of integrating it within the trees is something that's desired. And the pump track itself is for those who would like a description of it. It's a circuit of rollers, bank turns, and designed to be ridden by momentum so that it's momentum what propels you. And here again, it also helps build skills and confidence in bike riding. And then there's the progressive skills features. So this is the green, the blue, the black lines. And really here, the idea is to work with the terrain and provide this introduction to what someone might encounter within the Los Alamos County trail system as they increase their skill level. So it's using wood and rocks and natural features that you would find in the system and going from green to black. So the NICA route is another project component that we were asked to look at. This is a growing sport. Already now, or last year, there were 41 kids who participated in the sport. And the projections are that within the next 5 years, there will be about 100 kids from Los Alamos County that will be participating in these in this sport and participating in races. So they go to races throughout New Mexico, Colorado, and Arizona. The anticipation is that with a NICA course that would allow the students who are involved in the sport a location where they could practice along this 6.5 mile loop. And it would also provide a location where Los Alamos County could host races. And it's anticipated that the races would be hosted perhaps, 1 to 2 times per year. So for the remainder of the time, this course would be used by NICA participants, but also they're just improvements to the trail system as a whole. So really it's open to everybody. And the improvements in order to make it a sanctioned NICA course is the distance. There's a certain level of vertical feet that needs to happen. So you can see here, the course starts down in the canyon off of a new trailhead off of Pueblo Canyon Road. It's kind of a figure 8. It goes up Pueblo Canyon Road, and then it takes Tent Rock Trails east and back to the start line. There's requirements for passing zones. So with the NICA course, there would be an additional new passing lanes along Tent Rock Trail in order to accommodate this requirement. And you can see here this in the white stripes. This is a new trail section down in the canyon in order to have this sort of circuit. So a total of new trail here would be just over 7,000 linear feet. So on a normal basis, we're recommending that there be a new trailhead down in the canyon in this location. And what that would do was it would take kind of the burden off of this parking that's happening here now near the Y and bring it internal to the property. So it would serve as a staging location for all people to use the trailhead to access the Los Alamos County trails. And then at the time of an event, it would be kind of the home base for the event configuration, which would be the start finish and the staging area for the teams, the announcer, all of the kind of the components to host an event. And I know that one of there were a number of concerns that were raised in the focus group meetings, as well as the last public meeting about the footprint of this in an event. And we had at one point shown a large parking area here. And I think that in response to that, I think we can get probably creative with the parking by allowing parking along the road. It was mentioned that instead of creating a new parking area, that we could use the old wastewater treatment facility and perhaps have offsite parking that can shuttle people in. So I think from our discussions with the people, the NICA coaches, I think they're all flexible with being able to accommodate the sensitive habitat and the soils that are within this canyon that people are concerned about, as well as the cultural sites. So I think we're really trying to find a way to compromise and try to make this try to do this in a way that is respectful of everyone. And did you want to add something to that, John or Tony, before I go on to the equestrian?
Sure.
Go
I'll
ahead,
add
John.
one little thing. Just watching the chat, I see a lot of questions about environmental impacts, things like that. So typical project process is we would do kind of a feasibility, conceptual, or master plan like we're doing now. Getting the public input on how interested the public is in this project moving forward, before going into an environmental impact study, because those are very expensive. So if this moves forward, then it goes into either an environmental assessment or environmental impact study as part of a future phase, working through final design and everything. And that's where the design really gets refined, and dialed in to minimize environmental impacts. So I saw a number of people asking about that, so I wanted to put that in. I also saw one question about multi-use, and it would be multi-use, of course, 2 to 3 times a year, probably when an event is here. It's a much bigger impact because this NICA route would be closed down for the race. And then just the last thing to kind of bring it back to, we were talking about existing versus new trails. A lot of the NICA route is existing, but not all of it. Some of it is proposed new trail.
Thanks, John. Tony, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think, and I've been watching the chat as well, and it reminds me a lot of Salida and many other communities that I've been part of. And I think while we have a lot of different viewpoints that are completely opposite of each other, I think a lot of those viewpoints are very, very valid. And I want to not necessarily get on my soapbox here, but I want to say a few things that might help folks kind of look at it a different way than they are right now. And my mentor, by the way, always told me that people don't need trails, the land does. And what he meant by that was proper and rigorous, sustainable trail planning, design and construction, and routine maintenance is our best way to protect our cultural and natural resources. And it's probably also one of our best ways to get our youth into an environmental kind of mindset and helped us protect these resources that are so critical for our communities and our surrounding regions. So right now what we have here is most of the trails that you see in this plan are already existing. They have had limited maintenance, if any. I would suspect some of that maintenance has been done in the full moon by folks that probably helped create those trails. I don't want to be rude, but it's a spaghetti of trails. What we are trying to do is essentially pick out the best of the worst to where that could be a planned, managed system. We really, for a person that lives there, it reminds me of when I lived in Nederland. And when you live in a place, you really don't need signage. You really don't need a well-mapped system because you have the time to go figure it out. And really, it even goes as far as when some of us have been in those situations, we kind of like to keep it that way because we know once it gets signed, once it gets mapped, then it goes out on the public trail websites and there's more people. And I definitely understand that. If anybody's been to Salida, you can kind of see how we've gone. We're not Moab yet, but it has definitely changed our town. I like one of the comments is, and I don't really feel like we're going this direction, nor the county, is we're not necessarily trying to create a destination. We're more trying to create a hometown. These kids' bike parks, they're not like regional destinations. I mean, most of those are going to be used by folks in Los Alamos or White Rock. The rest of the trail system, yes, it definitely is becoming a more popular destination, regardless of what the county does in there. And I would suggest that we look at this and support the county because what everybody would probably benefit, not only the folks that live there, the folks that want to recreate there, but the indigenous plants and wildlife there, is if we had a well-planned, sustainable trail system that people could follow and it met the needs of the users. I firmly believe that it would lead to less social trail formations, less rogue trail construction. And I feel like it's our best chance to really ultimately protect those cultural and natural resources that are important to folks. Is it really needs a managed plan in there on which trails are designated trails, which ones are not, and a system of maintenance to get it up to best management practices. Sorry for the long-winded nature, but I hope that helps. It's one of those situations where if you don't do anything, it will continue to grow in popularity and you will continue to see more trails created where they probably shouldn't go. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony. And Corey, did you want to just mention here your conversations with San Ildefonso Pueblo? I know that was a concern people had, was the cultural.
Sure. We've had one initial meeting and we've got another one on Friday, but the CNI conversations were pretty interesting. They did have some concerns about the restricted areas, but they thought there was some opportunities to better manage and sign those. They're more concerned about the trespassing on their Pueblo lands, which are there. And then finally, one I didn't realize, but the Pueblo does have a hunting season. So there was some thoughts about maybe hunting down there, which impacts our use now. So those are the big ones, and we'll have another conversation with them on Friday.
Thanks, Corey. All right. So lastly, but not least, the Equestrian Trail. We were asked to look at a connection between North Mesa Stables down to Bio Canyon Trail. And here again, they're looking at existing trails. So there were two connections that we looked at: the historic Water Bar Trail, which is historic. It's very steep, narrow, and rutted. And while it works for some equestrians, not for all. So our recommendation is making improvements on the YCC trail in a way that accommodates horses and can also serve as a multi-use trail. So part of that would be clearing the vegetation in locations where there's not good visibility or sight lines, widening the trail so that there's locations for horses to either to step aside and either allow other horses to pass, or bicyclists or hikers. And in doing so, in those locations, there would need to be additional armoring of the trail edge so that it doesn't disintegrate along the edge, and to provide some directional and interpretive signage, particularly at the top and the bottom of the Water Bar Trail. So those are the recommendations there for the Equestrian Trail connection down into Bio Canyon. And that's the introduction of all of our projects with the revisions that we made from input that we received from you over the last few months. So with that, I will open it up to Q&A.
So if you'll raise your hand, Melinda will acknowledge you, and please try to keep your comments to a couple of minutes.
Go ahead, Tabor.
Hey, guys. So a quick question here. I mean, obviously, many of us have been involved with this for, decades at this point, building and maintaining the trails, but a couple of things here. So with the trail access into the canyon, quite a few of us, including county employees, have walked and GPSed a route that comes off directly below the Jewish Center, where the Canyon Rim Trail starts a series of short switchbacks that gets us into the canyon without impacting any of the sensitive areas, gives us a better flow for the trail down to the bottom of the canyon. We have that GPSed and mapped. and gives a couple more options without dealing with what is a disaster of a dirt road that covers the sewer line going down the bottom of the canyon. And that is simply due to the soil quality and the terrain. So just something for consideration, because it's been brought up in multiple meetings, and we've gone out there and literally walked every inch of that canyon top to bottom and back and forth. The other one is the skills park. There, I don't want that to be the hill that everybody dies on. The skills park would be ideal down below the high school or the aquatic center down there. It is the best central location to town for little kids access, and it is kind of the meeting point of Pueblo Canyon Trail, the Bridges Trail and such. The area that you've located as number 2 is technically a brownfield site, and we can get federal funds to remediate it into something else because it is the old sewer treatment plant. I've already looked into this and talked to the EPA about it. The connector piece coming down from the canyon would join in across the bridge at that spot as well, coming in. So it might be a little more ideal for the skills park. Olive Street is a paved street that comes down past the old L wing below the high school. So we do have a road down there. You can't build houses down there because there's not an in and an out per the fire chief, but that doesn't mean we can't go down there and recreate. The other last piece is down there at the bottom where we're talking about the NECA track around those areas. Question, were you guys looking at potential trail starting closer to the DOT site and moving along that area that we mapped out a couple years ago, because there's actual water and power down by the DOT site, which means that bathrooms, drinking fountains and such could actually be put in closer to the 502-4 intersection than the area that's on the downslope, kind of halfway in between. So anyway, those are my observations.
Just to answer the last question about the DOT site, so the NICA has to be a route loop. There might be some options there, but the top end of the loop, the west end, would definitely have to move down to stay within the overall length requirements for NICA route.
Do you want me to go on to the next speaker?
Sure, unless someone else wanted to comment on the previous one.
I'd have to allow them to talk in order to know what they're, unless you're talking internally.
Okay,
Sylvie, Adam?
Yep. Thank you. Let's see, someone just asked about the old BMX park next to the North Stable as potential for the skill park. So I'll second that question. I have questions about how much dispersed camping, where exactly, and who enforces that. Maybe somewhere you would provide information. Would the 2 formal events per year be rated as beginners? Back to parking, how many new spaces and where? Some specifics about that if you have them, or send me to where to find that information. And then the aquatic center parking being as for the users of the aquatic center, would they give approval for a new source of parking use there?
so regarding the BMX track is still a viable option for a BMX park. There is no problem with parking at the aquatic center. The advantage of that is there's also additional downtown parking as well. Let's see, Claudia, you want to talk about the dispersed camping part?
Yeah, and because a lot of times the NICA, they're overnight events. And so originally we had looked at if it's feasible to have just a location for camping. It's ideal, in proximity to the venue. So that's something ideally it would be down in the canyon. So originally we had proposed it on kind of a greenfield area. I think looking at alternate locations for that, or using public lands that are already campsites in the vicinity for that is another alternative. You had asked about the parking. So the permanent trailhead down there, we're recommending about 20 cars. The full, obviously, when you have events, if you have 200 racers, you're going to have a lot of cars. So that's why already now we have to look at where can we accommodate the parking. And that is something that still requires a little bit further study within the canyon.
Greg, did you have a question?
Hi, this is Greg. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
First question is whether the bathrooms at the Aquatic Center are available to users of the trail and the skills park. Also wondering if the road that runs down through Pueblo Canyon will be actually improved to a trail, because it's really a twin track service road right now. All you've really described here is maintenance, and I'm kind of would like some more specific on that maintenance. Another question is there going to be parking down at the NICA trail area available when there's not a NICA event going on? Right now, there's the gate at the Y that is locked most of the time, and if it isn't locked, you don't know when it will be locked. Thank you.
So yes, the restrooms will be available at the Aquatic Center. The idea of adding the parking spaces, we would want to reconfigure that gate so you could have access to the trailhead if that does become accomplished. And then Claudia, do you want to take the other question?
Yeah, the service road down in Acid Canyon, yes, we would recommend that be improved. In part because it needs it from a sustainability standpoint, but also when you have with the skills park, we would want to make sure that there was access for emergency vehicles in the event anything would happen down there. So for all those reasons, we would recommend improving the service road.
In response to the maintenance task, which typically included in that is really the ultimate goal in simplest terms for trail maintenance, obviously is to help manage your risk, but simply spoke is to keep water off the trail and keep people on the trail. So typical maintenance activities will be removing loose debris from the trail, making sure that there's no dead fallen trees on the trail, making sure the corridor is adequately pruned. If the trail is essentially compacted and indented and intercepting the sheet flow of water off the hillside, then it would be add more drainages or maybe clean the existing drainages which are filled up. Also would consider deberming, which would also restore the proper outslope to the trail in sections. I mean, essentially you're trying to eliminate concentrated water on there. And just like Los Alamos, Salida, where I live, is the same thing. We have months and months and months of drought. And then all of a sudden we have all hell break loose with a thunderstorm, and all that loose soil just moves down the hill. And then we see our fans down at the bottom of the trail or the road. So trying to get that water off the trail at least every 75 to 100 feet is really the ultimate goal of a maintenance program.
Mark, did you have a question?
Hi, can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can.
Hi, so I live on Pueblo Canyon off Cappingland Road, and I just wanted to say I'm really excited to hear about the developments of the trail, and definitely was curious about it being beginner / intermediate. So will this be a trail that like a Walmart bike can do, or is it going to require a super expensive bike to have fun on? And that's it. But thank you so much for all your hard work, and I'm really excited to hopefully see a trail there improve someday.
I'd be glad to take Mark's question there.
Go for it.
Yeah, good question. I mean, the difficulty with the topography, and I mentioned this in the chat, is there's lots of sections. In fact, I would say the majority, over half of the trail system, could be considered green or blue, which is a beginner or intermediate level trail. However, when you hit those cliff zones, you automatically take that to a higher level with the existing trails. And I know none of us in here want to blast those cliffs to smithereens for 2 miles to find a 7% grade down them either. So we're kind of stuck with what is essentially a mixed trail system. If it was like climbing, probably most of that trail system would be rated black diamond, because typically most of the trails, if you're going from one level or the other to the bottom, you're gonna have to basically go down a steep section of the canyon where the grades are gonna exceed 20 to 25% and be more prone to erosion and be less user friendly for those folks that are not used to that kind of exposure.
And just to add on a tiny bit to that, so as Tony said, like for the 7-mile trail, for example, large majority of that, it's pretty much all existing. Large majority would be rated as green blue right now. Pretty family friendly, but there are sections, and that's why we want to sign those sections that will be more difficult, and without major environmental and financial impacts, you're not going to change it to a green blue. So we felt the best approach was to sign those and use them as existing, rather than trying to come up with some very complex and costly new trail to get it to a purely green blue trail.
The area to the east at the Y2 is the most gentle terrain with the least concerns for any kind of falls. And when you have beginners learning to mountain bike, you're not going to put them on the rim trail, even though from a tread standpoint, that's an easy trail. But one little mistake and they roll and drop 200 feet, that makes that trail not beginner friendly. Whereas all the stuff down at the Y, granted, folks may have to drive their beginner riders down there, or they're folks that are from lower elevations that want to take a ride. But those trails down there, I would say majority of those you could ride on a Walmart bike. It might not be as fun on a Walmart bike as it would be a more expensive bike. But I don't know if folks have seen the videos. I mean, people are taking some Walmart bikes and just trying to destroy them. And I mean, they'll definitely withstand the trail use down there on the east end.
Lawrence, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a comment. Someone was much earlier, was talking about area 2 would be more suitable for recreation. The problem with that is if you're going to have a lot of people recreating down there, if they're going to have people driving down Olive Street, then you start getting a fire hazard. You start getting nuisance problems with noise and lights. And the neighborhood has already come out against that, saying that's not a good use of that area. So if you're going to open up Olive Street, you're going to have a lot of opposition from the neighborhood. And I think also from the people that are worried about fires, because that's a prime area for fires right now. That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Clay, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll speak to kind of what was just said about the skills park area being down at the old Pueblo plant site. That's what we call it. I was actually involved with the remediation of that site. So I'm pretty familiar with it, but there's actually a water line down there still, and it's still active. The one thing about a skills park is, especially around here, you're actually going to need water, because it otherwise it'll get so dusty that you're going to have to mitigate dust, and it'll help to keep the features stable and everything. So I think that it's the most suitable place, because site 1 actually has more trees and is in a more densely forested area than the site that's at the old Pueblo plant is already clear and pre-developed. I mean, there's still gravel and safe areas around. So keep that in mind, that there's actually water to that site that could be reactivated. Speaking about the NICA trail being down at the Y, while it seems like a good idea, I have questions and concerns about the fact that the area is really dusty. And I know we've talked, I've spoken with the development team about this. The soils down there are super dusty. So I'm wondering, what the plan is to sort of fortify that, to keep it from being so dusty. It's one thing to have a through trail, because you're just going to go through the one time, but to have a multi-loop type of trail, that concerns me. You're going to have to amend the soil somehow, because there's no way. I mean, that's just silica. It's moon dust. So that, that's my other concern, and everything else that goes along with it. Basically, that's it. Otherwise, I'm really excited about the prospect of some finally some developed mountain biking. I've got to say, this is the first real big push for developing mountain biking in the county. I mean, it's always been shot down, and I think it's time that we step into current times and do something about it. Anyway, that's it. I'm pretty excited with the whole prospect and the team for working so hard on it. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Clay. And you're right about making sure that there needs to be water for maintenance for the Bike Skills Park. So that's part of the reason why we recommended Area 1 for that, because of the proximity to infrastructure. But I think, Tony, you want to weigh in on the dust for the NICA route? I know you guys looked at that.
Yeah, I mean, I am not a soil scientist, but I did take that into consideration when we were going down there. It seemed to me that there was a lot more sand in the soil down there than there was up higher, where you're closer to the cliffs, less alluvial there, and you have more of the pumicey things. Silicosis is a definite concern. And I know that we haven't really talked about that on any of the trails, nor have we seen really any educational materials on that at Los Alamos or any of the other places. I know our kids here, which our league is supposed to be about 1,500 kids this year, growing at about 25% a year still, and they race at Eagle, Colorado, and that also has a very high level of silicates in the soil. So from a risk management standpoint, I would say it would behoove us all to do a little bit more research into that, because we maybe need to put signage or recommend that signage needs to go up in the whole area, because those are very high silicate soils, as Clay pointed out. As far as amending the soils and adding any kind of surfacing, that would be a fairly easy task to accomplish, but it is a very expensive task to accomplish. Probably averaging about $50,000 a mile to surface a 3 to 4 foot wide trail that can't be accessed by a dump truck with 4 inches of aggregate. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Tony.
There's a person on 518-9039. Did you have a question or comment?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Mary Grow here. I just wanted to echo what everyone else has said, that I'm really excited about this idea of creating intentional trails in town. I did have an answer. One question previously was about the NICA trail use. So NICA trails are meant to be safe for beginners, but challenging enough for advanced riders. So it sort of can give everyone an opportunity. So yeah, that's my main thing. And again, thank you so much for considering this.
Thanks.
And Linda, real quick before we go to the next one, I noticed Sylvia asked some questions in the chat. I know she raised her hand, and I think maybe some of her questions just got lost. I was going to try to address at least a couple of them. So let's see, Aquatic Center parking is for Aquatic Center users. Would they allow bikers parking? Corey, do you have an answer to that one? I can't remember if there have been so many questions answered.
Yeah, they can park there.
Okay. So does the project include new parking spaces? The 7 Mile Trail, not at this time. The NICA route does include that small permanent new trailhead. How wide will the trail be? So the areas where we're using existing trail, it really isn't changing. There might be some key little areas that, through maintenance might widen a couple inches or so. The NICA trail, it varies. So to do a NICA route, you have to have a certain percent of the trail has to be passable. So meaning bikers can pass each other. So for that, we're taking advantage of the 2-track, the existing road that's in the bottom of Pueblo Canyon, because that's already passable. And then we're also meeting that passable percentage by some of the new trail being constructed a bit wider. BMX park next to the North Stables for Bike Skills Park. I believe Corey said that is still a viable option. I know there's not very much terrain relief in that park. It's pretty flat, and it's just the BMX jumps that have been built there is the one challenge. I think dispersed camping we've talked about. Would the 2 formal events per year be rated as beginners? I think Mary actually just addressed that pretty well. NICA routes, it's a high school racing. And so it's designed to be beginner to intermediate, but can still be challenging for advanced. I think that's it.
Celeste,
Thanks,
did you have
John.
a question or comment? Is there a Celeste?
Hi. First of all, I'd like to say what everybody else is saying, which is thank you so much for all the work you're doing. I think it's terrific. I'm maybe a little different because I'm a passionate hiker and a passionate mountain biker. I do it about 50-50, and I would say my husband and I are out almost every day, either hiking or biking. The thing that is so special from a hiker's perspective about Los Alamos is the level of courtesy that I encounter on the trail from the mountain bikers is astounding. And I think part of it is just Los Alamos people tend to be very courteous. It's our culture. But I also am afraid part of it has to do with numbers. There's just not that many mountain bikers. And I've spent a lot of time in other areas, especially Park City. And a long time ago when mountain biking was first starting in Park City, people were polite. Now you can't hike anymore. The mountain bikers have taken over, and it's no longer fun to hike. You're constantly jumping off the trail because the mountain bikers are flying by. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is my fear with putting the terrain park at the Aquatic Center is if you start getting a whole lot of mountain bikers in there, what's going to happen to all the hikers at the Aquatic Center? And there are a lot of hikers that use that road. And I would say my perception is I see more hikers than bikers there right now. So my only concern about putting the park at the Aquatic Center is increasing the number of mountain bikers to the point where the pressure on the hikers gets to be very difficult. Because I think if you want to be successful and bringing mountain biking up to a higher level, you still have to pay attention to the hikers. So that's my first point. My second point is that on the NICA trail, the one thing I haven't heard anybody talk about is how are you going to get cars off of 502 onto that dirt road? Because I ride down there a fair amount too. Usually I'll come down, I'll leave a car down there and I'll ride down from Los Alamos and end up down there and then take the car back. And that's a dicey entrance and exit to get, onto that, into the sewer plant road from the Y. And that's just during non-rush hour. We call it the rush minute because Los Alamos has very little traffic except for in the morning and in the evening. But what are you going to do if you have all these people coming in and out during the lap times, between 7 in the morning and 9 in the morning and between 4 in the afternoon? You're going to have some serious, horrible accidents there, unless you're going to have to totally revisit and make that a real exit and entrance. And I think if you don't put that in your planning, you're going to get a lot of pushback from anyone who drives up and down that road. I think it's a terrific idea. I love that trail down there. We ride it a lot, and I think having a racetrack for the kids would be awesome. But I just am worried about that entrance and exit. And then the third thing is living on Pajarito Canyon. I would really, really hate to see camping down there. And the only reason is I'm afraid of fire. And if a fire gets going in the bottom of Pajarito Canyon, the amount of damage it could do, I really worry about camping in that area. But other than that, I think your ideas are fantastic. And thank you. Yeah, I mean Pueblo Canyon, sorry. I just thought it, but yeah, I really worry about camping down at the bottom of Pueblo Canyon. I just think that's a can of worms that probably shouldn't be opened. But again, thank you for everything you guys are doing.
Thanks, Celeste. I'll speak a little bit to whenever there's a race, and Mary, maybe Mary can weigh in on this too. Whenever there's a race, typically an event like that has to, you meet with law enforcement and figure out how you can make it a safe venue. So making sure that people can make that turn or have signage so that it's very clear how to get into the Pueblo Canyon Road is something that will happen as part of the staging of that venue, so that it doesn't cause an unsafe situation for anyone. So that's to answer your question. And I think for sure, especially now, acknowledging that like we're very concerned about any kind of fire. And I think looking at the camping down in the canyon is something that like would only be proposing it as part of a NICA event if that is something that is feasible and permissible down in the canyon. So it is something that is nice to have when you have an event. Is just finding the right location and making sure that all the rules are followed so it doesn't endanger anything or anyone. And did you want to add to that, Mary, at all? See that you're on. Okay. And just to answer your last question, or maybe your first question, Celeste, what will happen to the hikers if the 7 Mile Trail and the Bike Skills Park, the primary access point is from the Aquatic Center parking lot? There is a hiking trail that can be used going through Kinnick Park that will might be a nicer, or is an alternate route that that would be might be more suitable for hikers to descend down in the canyon rather than use the 7 Mile Trail. So that's also an alternative way of getting down into the canyon.
Brad, did you have a question? or-
Sorry, Claudia,
yeah.
did you get my response before? I'm having a trouble unmuting. This is Mary again.
Sorry,
able to
no,
hear
we
me?
didn't hear your previous response.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So I'm calling in, so the mute's a little funny. Just to echo what Claudia said, when there is an event, it's usually a Saturday, and we have a lot of signage, and we even have volunteers on parking duty to make sure people are, you know, pulling off where they need to and parking safely. So.
Thanks.
Brad?
Yeah. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say, thanks again for all of this. Also, I see there's a lot of people concerned and kind of weighing in on, how these trails should be built and what's going to happen and all this kind of stuff. And I realize, this being Los Alamos, everybody's an expert on everything. But I would like to have people just kind of trust the experts here. If you've been in areas like Salida, like I have, we go there a lot. The trails, when they're built professionally and built correctly, they don't need maintenance. The water sheds off them. Those trails in Salida are almost bulletproof by now, and they've only been there a few years. And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize, because we're so used to trails just being so eroded, so nasty, and we just accept that that's part of trail building, and it's not. I'm excited to just get anything built just so that people will see these trails and say, oh, wow, that's what a good trail is like. I support whatever you guys do. I really hope that we can get this going and to get something started here. Anyway, and as far as the camping goes, one other consideration is with events, when we did the Enduro race a few years ago, the county would allow camping in other, like even parks, stuff like that. They allowed us to have campers go in the park that's right over by the brew tub, right over there, and just camping. And so there's a lot of options that could, that are very safe. They don't start fires there or anything like that. So I'm just looking forward to something finally getting done in this town. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
Sorry, I'm trying to see. James?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Hi. So as a resident of the Orange Nickel community there, that's right between the two proposed skills parks areas, I would say that the community would be supportive of, or at least not opposed to, skills parks in those areas. There's a lot of avid mountain bikers and just outdoor enthusiasts here that are very welcoming to more things to do in this town, lots of families and things like that. As someone who has broken a collarbone on one of our trails and had to walk out, I'm pretty comfortable with rescue at these sites. And then as far as questions, I was curious if there's like a GPX or any tracks of the proposed sites that we could look at in more detail. I know some other people were asking these questions. On the NICA trail, I was trying to figure out where there isn't already trail and trying to get an idea for myself of what kind of environmental impact that would be. I'm kind of curious, like how wide it would be. And then, more of the details of, how much is this going to cost? How long is it going to take? What kind of machinery is going to be required, that kind of stuff. And also a lot of these other questions that were asked here, like Celeste talking about the safety of the egress, ingress into that area. I'm really glad to see people lot of these issues. But yeah, I would really like to see some like GPX tracks or something to get like concrete idea of what is proposed here.
So we have it mapped exactly the proposed NICA route, and the new trail is 7,200 linear feet. So we will share our presentation. So you'll be able to see that on that slide a little bit better. And we're as part of our deliverables, we will be putting together costs on this. At first, we're going through the community process and getting input and making revisions based on public input. I am going to, on your question regarding the NICA, the machinery and the width, I'm going to defer to Tony to weigh in on that as a trail builder.
Yeah, width of the trail, as John mentioned before, typically trails in that area, you know, we're better off keeping things narrow. The less dirt that's exposed, the better. I mean, I think most hikers and mountain bikers will say the more narrow the trail is, the more intimate it is, the better experience it is as compared to essentially riding down the road at the bottom of Pueblo Canyon. Width on the NICA trails where they're passing zones, there's in addition, a handful of passing zones on that NICA trail that will need to be 5 feet wide. I can't remember, John could add on that. I think they're about 40 to 50, 60 feet long, somewhere in there. Whether the trails would be built by machine or hand is pretty much up to how the county spec that out and how they went about it. Will they have volunteers build it? Will they have some kind of youth corps build it? Will they put it out to bid for a professional trail builder? And regardless of whether it's hand built or machine built, the amount of disturbance is not necessarily due virtually to hand built or machine built. It's due to the width of the trail. Because when you're cutting on a side slope, the width of the trail pretty much tells you how much debris you have to get rid of, regardless of whether it's by hand or whether it's by machine. So kind of hard to answer something like that. The width of the trail would definitely be more economical and faster to build with machines than it would be hand in many of the steeper side slope areas. However, in some of the gentle areas, as many of you are aware, it's very easy to go build a bunch of trail out there when it's not a whole lot of vegetation covering it. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, and I'll just add on, Tony, a little bit. So yeah, a lot of the completely new construction of NICA Trail is that wider passable zone. In addition, on the existing trails, we've identified some key areas, short sections that either could be widened or in a lot of them essentially just an alternate route. So you have your single track that exists and there's a little bypass line that goes a few feet away. So like Tent Rocks, for example, is a great trail. We've identified some key areas in there that some optional bypasses could be added. And then that satisfies the passable requirements. So, trying to balance keeping a great trail how it is with adding some small additions, small changes to make it NICA usable. The other thing I want to comment is Tony says machinery. He's used to the trail machinery. For people not in the trail world, you say machinery and you think big stuff. A lot of trail builders use really specialized machinery, things that are, only a handful of feet wide. So, even though he says machine built for trail, we're not typically talking like big excavators, big machinery.
The machines that a contractor would choose down in that zone would typically be a Sutter 300 dozer that's 29.5 inches wide, and then either follow it with a micro excavator of 28 inches wide, or in some of the wider areas, they would likely follow it with a 2-ton mini excavator that is 39 inches wide.
Thanks.
Jared?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So I believe that most people that have come to Los Alamos and live in Los Alamos love the outdoors, whether they're mountain bikers or hikers or whatever. what I find disconcerting about the process so far, while there's been a lot of work, is the lack of openness to considering alternative sites where infrastructure already exists, including parking and water, and would not require, for at least, the kids' skills park, maybe not the NICA, but possibly even the NICA. And the process has gone in a fashion that raises a lot of concern for people because it's been so closed loop and then very rushed at odd times. And I would encourage Corey Styron to take heed. The community in Los Alamos, once they wake up, will really unite in a fashion if they don't like something. So if Corey wants to be successful with this project, he better become very inclusive beyond this meeting, taking comments like Celeste about mountain biking and hiking. And I think everybody in this community supports family. Most of them moved here because it's a safe community to raise kids. And enabling kids to have a good time and an opportunity to learn mountain biking is great, but it has to be at a facility where it's convenient for a parent to check on the kid, to leave the kid off, to pick up the kid, to be with the kid, including bathroom facility, water facility, proximity to emergency services if necessary. And I'm concerned that this process has really ignored the cost of infrastructure and facility development and is thinking that there's a gold out there with tourists coming here to camp down at the NICA races. And I just don't see that. Most people that come to visit Los Alamos, because there are great opportunities here, go to Santa Fe to eat their meals, to sleep in the hotels. So I really encourage the county, before they spend the taxpayers' money, to really look at a cost benefit from an economic perspective. Not to say that that mountain biking is not a good attractor, but I don't think it's going to be the economic goldmine that is being sold here. That's my comment.
John? John Williams? We'll come back to you, John. Jean DeWart?
Hi, I would be very happy to have some mountain bike trails in Los Alamos that I could actually bike. I consider myself a beginner or low intermediate mountain biker, and it'd be really great to have some trails that I could bike on in addition to the Quadji Mesa bike trail past the stables. So I think that's terrific. I have a very large concern, as others have mentioned, about dispersed camping in Pueblo Canyon. The environmental impact of dispersed camping is very great. And as it's been said, it's a very dusty area, a sandy area. And I think it's inappropriate for, say, 300 people to do dispersed camping for the weekend. As Brad and perhaps others have mentioned, there are other solutions. Sometimes we've had some big bike tours come through town, and they've worked it out with the high school to camp on the practice fields and have a shower trailer in the parking lot. And that seems to have worked pretty well. the other idea I'd like to throw out, and I hope the county considers the recreational possibilities of Rendia Canyon. It's currently owned by the DOE, but I understand in the next year, the county has a decision to make about that land being transferred to county ownership. And I think there might be some possibilities in Rendia Canyon as well. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jean.
John, were you able to unmute? If you're You can always add it to the chat as well. That is all of the hands that we have up right now.
So anyone else want to make a comment or ask a question? Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, Corey, so how do we go about entertaining different locations? And I'll preface that question with, or precede that question with the comment that in the last meeting that I attended that you ran, I walked away very disconcerted because it seemed like the decision has already been made and it hasn't been brought in front of the county voters. So I would like to understand how one goes about entertaining different locations for these various facilities, because it is important to give the kids in the community and the mountain bikers in the community capabilities that they want to have. But I don't think it should be ramrodded down the taxpayers who support this county without the opportunity to say what is the best or better location from a variety of factors that need to be considered. So how do we go about entertaining different locations?
So you'll have that opportunity at the poll to either support or not support this. This landed in Pueblo Canyon because most of these items have already been vetted over the years. So the point here is you either can support it or not support it in Pueblo Canyon, and then we can go back to the drawing board.
So Corey, does that mean if we don't support it, the poll's going to be interpreted as not supporting community and families and the kids? Or is it strictly going to mean not supporting the location?
It's not supported in Pueblo Canyon.
Okay.
Katie?
Hi, I just want to follow up with that I think the poll would be a lot more useful and nuanced, as people are saying, if we could say, yes, we support these things, but not in this location, or no, we don't support these things at all, or yes, we support these things in this location, because I think people have different opinions on that.
Brad?
Does anybody really think that we're going to get a consensus about a location? I mean, that's not going to happen. At some point, I mean, somebody's going to be unhappy. That's pretty much a guarantee. You know, that's just life. But, you know, again, there's only so many places. I mean, Los Alamos only has so many canyons. There's only, you know, there's only so many places that you can look. People, they did their homework. They've looked at all the options. It's not going to be best for everybody, but you know, we're going to do the best. You know, everybody's going to do the best they can, and you know, there's no way to make everyone happy here. I think we've got to just kind of accept that, you know, we do what's best for Los Alamos, do what's best for, you know, get the experts to say, okay, this is the best place to do it. Least impact. There's going to be some impact, but, you know, that's the problem, that's why nothing seems to get done, because everybody's always insisting on, well, you know, trying to please everyone, and it just won't work.
Can I jump in and say that actually, I think that's incorrect, Brad. I don't think the experts chose these locations. I think Corey and Community Services chose these locations, correct me if I'm wrong, and then went to the experts and said, please design the trails in these locations.
Corey, is that true? I didn't get that feeling at all.
So Brad, I don't believe that the locations have been fully vetted here in the county. I believe they may have been informed by a select group of very vocal mountain bikers, or perhaps people that have conflict of interest positions. But I do believe that there are a large number of other areas in the county that would certainly support the kids track, maybe not the NECA track, but perhaps, like I said, the NECA track. And I don't see having it down at the Y, the NECA track, is going to be economically beneficial to the county. If you want people to have expending dollars in the county, you got to bring them up the hill into the county. Then you're going to get them going to the Brew Pub and Bowes Brothers, and you're going to get them camping up at Camp May, and you're going to get them getting meals in town and using the hotels in town. Otherwise, they're going to go to Santa Fe and use those things.
Jared, I don't disagree with you on that. I would like to see it up there, but the problem is that the more you put up here, the more people complain. I mean, they just tried to get it out of everyone's way.
Well, I don't, Brad, I'm not sure I agree with that, because the process has been, you know, I know that a year ago, the equestrian community came in and said, well, wait a minute, this is going to tread on our horse trails. And so that was beneficial in the sense that the equestrian community got heard. And yes, everybody has competing interests, but when there are locations in the county, like the east end of the golf course by the roundabout,
I think we lost somebody.
This is Tabor. I would answer that real quickly. We've had 5.5 years of public meetings in the county council chambers, in sub chambers. We've done presentations out on the mesas. The first option that we all chose was Bio Canyon and creating a new trail that would not impact any existing users, because it would be a new trail. And we got vehement opposition to that. So that only leaves Pueblo Canyon as the only remaining canyon that can be used. Everything else has other restrictions on it, such as it being DOE land. That's it. That's what we got.
So just to follow up on Katie's question, Katie, honestly, everything I've looked at, from council meeting notes to items in the budget, to even locations, Pueblo Canyon was the optimal choice. Yes, we could stick things in other parks. Yes, we could stick things around the county. I think directly from what Jared said before he rolled off is, it all made sense to put it in a centralized location to get people to come to it. You know, that's just my 2 cents on it. I'm sorry, we had this conversation with them. Again, that's why we've structured the poll. If you don't support it in Pueblo Canyon, please vote no. We'll look at other options. Honestly, we can stick the slider park, the little pump track, maybe, and I use a big maybe on the skills park. Yeah, we could stick it in some other park. Would it be as effective? Probably not. But again, for tonight, all we want to talk about is Pueblo Canyon. There are the 5 trails there. All we're going to take it is you don't accept it in Pueblo Canyon.
Hey, Corey, this is Clay Mosley again. So, I've lived here for now, what, 20, God, going on 24 years. And I've been a part of the mountain biking community for a long time. And I understand, the opposition's points here. We can't go in, destroy habitats. We can't go in and destroy historic trails. And I fully agree. I'd probably hike a lot more miles than I ever bike. But I will say that we've tried a lot of options. And, we tried the Bio Canyon thing. And I still believe that that's the best option, because what it would do is separate the bikers from the hikers and horse users. And we tried to demonstrate that the Bio Canyon route would only cross that trail 3 times at a right angle and would never actually be on the same trail. And everybody's like, we can't do that. So we conceded that option. And so Pueblo Canyon, while I think it's not the best option at all, that's what we have to go with. And so we're going to try to make this work. And it's not optimal, because it's not going to be a green blue. It's going to have sections like Tony explained that are going to be steeper and are going to be a little bit harder to build. It's not going to be ideal, but it's a concession that the mountain bikers are making to the rest of the trail using community. So that needs to be considered. I don't think that the skills park at the bottom of the aquatic center is the most ideal place, because, it's in proximity to peak users. It's in proximity to people who enter the canyon, but it is closest to downtown, and it is easy for people to get there. It's near the central area. Kids are there. It's below the high school. It has a lot of beneficial use aspects. Technically speaking, I think the pre-developed site of the old Pueblo plant is better, because it fire danger. There's an access down to it that can be driven by emergency management and everybody else to get there. I think it's better, but we've got to go with what works with the design and the overall concept. And I disagree with the fact that economically this won't move the needle at all. I have seen firsthand. I was just in Salida yesterday, and it's just incredible. And I would say that Salida is a very similar community to ours. It has similar kind of terrain. It has similar kind of geology, and it's just amazing what that place has done. And I know from being in the New Mexico cycling community for over 40 years of my life, that people are like, man, Los Alamos is like an untapped potential. It needs something done to kind of enhance what we have. And I was part of the original IMBA study, and I rode around with them, and they all said the same thing. If you guys just cleaned up some of what you have and maintained what you had and developed a few other little signature type trails, that's all you would have to do. And I don't want something that's tacky, that isn't fitting in our natural environment. I mean, I really don't want something that's ugly and is going to draw, a bunch of knuckle dragger mountain bikers that aren't friendly. No one wants that. I think that when you look at the concept and what's being put forth, it fits in the natural setting of our community, and it would be something that enhanced our trail user experience, and it would be something that we would all be proud of. It'd be a gem for the community. So I'm gonna have to support some of what some other people have said, and let's let this happen at some point. And if it gets to be like, okay, whoa, that little spot isn't good, let's change this a little bit, I think our voices will be heard. And anyway, that's all I have to say. I've seen this go on for a long time, and I feel like it's time that something be done to enhance what we have for mountain biking.
All right, Mr. Tickner, I think you've got the last word.
I keep hearing that Bio Canyon is not acceptable, not suitable, not available, but I've not heard anybody say exactly why, other than Clay was saying something about it goes over a trail 3 times. What was the problem? Was it a conflict problem? Was it a trail problem? Who was concerned with the Bio Canyon option of putting a trail, just a mountain bike, a blue-green trail, mountain bike trail in Bio Canyon? What's the problem with that?
Brad, since you have the most relevant knowledge, would you like to answer that question?
Absolutely. I had very intimate knowledge of that problem. Bio Canyon would have been a phenomenal choice. We had builders come in, say they could build a great trail, it would work, it would be out of everyone's way.
What kind of trail?
It was going to be a trail that ran from the roundabout all the way down to the Y, and it would kind of hug the canyon wall.
And this was not the flow trail.
Yeah, this was the flow trail.
Okay, so we're talking about a different trail than a green-blue trail.
No, that was a blue. That was a green-blue trail.
A green-blue flow trail.
Yes.
That's different. A flow trail is different than a regular mountain bike trail.
No, a flow trail has a bit. See, there's only about 1.5 degrees of drop in Bio Canyon. This is not a downhill trail. A flow trail is not a downhill trail. It's got a very slight grade down just so that you can kind of flow with it, hence the name.
So a flow trail, as I understand a flow trail is something that it's made so you don't have to brake as much. You can ride the berms, and it's no pedaling. Don't have to pedal as much, but it's made to go smooth and fast.
Smooth, or well, you go as fast as you want.
Can I add this to this? I think I might be able to help some definitions of the F word here, flow trails. When I rode in Los Alamos, and I hadn't been there in 20 years, and I rode there, a couple months ago, I would consider a number of those trails flow trails already. Why? Because they undulate horizontally and vertically. And that provides kinesthetic diversity, which is body's awareness in its place in space by the proprioceptors in your joints and tendons and muscles. So any trail that undulates and it gives you that roller coaster feeling could be considered a flow trail. You can even have a super rocky technical trail that I would consider technical trail, and other people would even say, no, that also has flow trail. You just need to be going faster. So that flow trail, it's a very nebulous term, but what it means is a very kinesthetically diverse trail. Now, here's the crux. The amount of flow that you have in your flow trail at some point reaches the level where hikers will not choose that trail. Okay, runners like in-slope corners and long rollers more, but when you put too many features into it, then a hiker might be at a disservice for that trail. However, when you have trails that exist out there already that are very flowy, very rhythmic, that they are already enjoyable to all users. So when you use the word flow, a flow trail could be any level of trail, and it could be any level of technical difficulty, but it would just have flow. And I'll say this right now, what I might call a flow trail or not a flow trail, a more advanced rider might say, oh yeah, that's got great flow. And I basically just about knocked my teeth out. I didn't feel any flow. So it's kind of it's not the greatest term to use, but it also carries that weight with it that if you put too much flow into it, it's not as user-friendly for hikers.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thanks, Tony. Far better job than I could have done. But anyway, to get back to what happened was we were gonna put it in there. It was gonna be a new trail. We thought everybody should be happy. It gets the mountain bikers off of the equestrian trails that are, because right now we still ride in bio, but we're on the same trail. The equestrians disagreed. They thought that they would bring more bikes into Bio Canyon, and that it would be a problem. And they basically went door to door, got signatures, and turned it into, and basically that's what got it canceled out of Bio. That's why Bio is not being considered, because of the junk show it turned into last time.
So the equestrians were concerned about conflicts between the bikers and the equestrians?
Yes. And so they, even though we're doing a new trail, got us off their trails, they didn't see it that way.
So if someone in Pueblo Canyon is concerned about conflicts, is that the same problem as Bio Canyon?
I'm sure it is, but you know what? At some point, common sense has to come through. This is not gonna, we're not putting in a highway. We're putting in a bike trail.
All right, so my final comment is, if you can say that you can mitigate conflicts in Pueblo Canyon by educating bikers, hikers, anyone, then you can do the same thing in Bio Canyon. You can educate users in Bio Canyon the same way. And so Bio Canyon should not be off limits, because if you can educate people to get around, to minimize conflicts, then both Pueblo Canyon and Bio Canyon have the same potential.
Lawrence, you're preaching to the choir. I'm just saying that we've been through it.
All right, so I'm just saying that Bio Canyon shouldn't be off the table because of conflicts.
All right, well, thank you both gentlemen for your comments. We appreciate everyone's thoughts tonight. Linda's gonna pop up the poll here in just a minute. There's each trail that we've talked about tonight is independent. This is not about everything. Each one is independent. You'll have the opportunity to support it or non-support it in Pueblo Canyon. If you do support it, please rank it 1 to 6. I think 1 is your highest and 5 is your lowest. We'll tally this information, make some of the adjustments. And then we'll have another conversation this summer at a Park and Recreation Board about the results and pricing and all that good stuff. So you'll have another opportunity to weigh in. So again, thanks everyone for taking the time out of your night. Thank you for all the great comments and thoughts. And then if you want to follow this, you can follow it on the county's website. If you'll hover over to the right, I put the link in the chat, but you can actually see all the meetings have been videotaped or virtually videoed. We'll have the transcripts there. This meeting will probably be up sometime on Friday, so you can go back and look and see where everything is. We will include the poll questions for this meeting. We'll also include the poll questions for the last meeting. We originally thought we were going to combine the polls, but since we've had a week and made some adjustments, we'll do them as 2 separate polls. So again, thanks everyone. Take your poll, and I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. So Linda, how do people access the polls? It's just on the screen and they just got to click on it?
That is my understanding. It does appear that people are able to see the polls. So it should be there somewhere. Maybe somebody who's taking it can give a little more guidance as to how they found it.
be sure to scroll down after you pick the first, your first choices. It's all of them down below.
I think I think everybody has taken it. It's not showing any, oh, never mind. Give it a few more minutes.
So we'll give about 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, we'll give about 2 more minutes to complete the poll. And again, thank you so much for attending. All right, Linda, does it look like everybody's polled that wants to poll?
Has anybody not finished the poll? If you could raise your hand. It doesn't appear that it's moving any longer.
Okay. All right, everyone, thank you. We're gonna close this meeting. Again, I appreciate everyone's time and conversation this evening, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, Linda, you can go ahead and close it.
The poll has been closed
Okay, we can close the meeting as well.
already.